Font. We interviewed him before, and we weren't comfortable with how that turned out as far as the audio. So now we are in the home of our beautiful friend, and it is amazing. I'm in San Francisco, and this is a beautiful, beautiful place. Thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you here. We've got so much to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time we have to get all the stuff
right
we need to talk about, but we can either do editing or even have a second
Yeah, we could.
You have to do a follow-up.
Right.
Because we're going to be discussing the issue of marriage equality and the decisions that the Supreme Court will be taking within this window between the 10th of this month to the 24th of June. So
Right.
we can certainly have a follow-up.
Yeah.
So either it'll be a celebration or we'll have a wake,
Right.
depending upon the outcome of the Supreme Court's
I
decisions.
really think, sociologically, if you look at what women have gone through, what certain minorities have gone through, they can do a little more of the sociological bickering with immigration. But for this thing right now, this marriage equality thing,
It is about basic human rights and civil rights.
Absolutely.
So it would be really interesting to kind of dissect what's going on with each of these Supreme Court justices. I think it's really interesting ultimately how they're going to lean. And I think most people tend to believe that you'll have Justice Sotomayor leaning for gay marriage because she has come up with some really amazing arguments and
Right.
on a couple occasions, in her own inimitable, nice way, slapped down Justice Scalia for some of the comments that he's made.
Right.
Then you have Ginsburg, who's also fighting in our corner, and who had even mentioned, I think, in addressing one of the arguments, saying what you're basically saying is you're offering one group of people whole milk marriage, and then you want to offer this group skim milk marriage. So you have Sotomayor, Ginsburg, and then you had Kagan,
Right.
who then brought up the issue when they tried to argue that marriage was really about procreation, saying, so you're trying to tell me that elderly people who aren't able to procreate shouldn't get married then?
Right.
What about them?
Right.
So you have these three lionesses going out there that are just clearly going to support the issue, as I see it, of marriage equality. And then you have the kind of Kennedy, who tends to, Breyer, who tends to also lean towards more towards the liberal. So you have four that are leaning towards the liberal. Then you have Kennedy, who can go either way.
Right.
Kennedy is that fifth guy that can go either way.
A lot of times I think he leans toward being a populist too, and I think with the country saying, okay, we gotta let these people have rights. I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. What I like what you're discussing too is that there's these brilliant lawyers on both sides.
Oh yeah.
And when I was listening to the oral argument, it just almost seemed like the justices sort of elevated themselves away from the lawyers and started having dialogue amongst themselves about it.
Right.
And so that's what's really going to be helpful.
Well, what I thought was really interesting, and I'm trying to remember who was it that asked. I think it was Sotomayor. She said, so given when she was talking to the people who were against marriage equality, that were advocating against marriage equality, she said, so can you give me, aside from what flimsy arguments you gave me, can you give me one sound, good argument why people within the LGBT community should not be married? I can't.
Right.
So that's why I think, as you said, it elevates that, okay, we're just going to have to talk amongst ourselves as Supreme Court justices to kind of
And that's exactly to me, I think that is safer because it moves away from the mythological standpoint that the opposing side is using. They're opposing it based on religiosity, myth,
procreation.
Yeah.
Because
not everybody who gets married is always interested in having children.
Right. Or can't and need to adopt, like Justice Roberts.
Right.
So that's why I think he's another wild card in there because hearing all those arguments, I can't see how he does not do a little bit of projection and consider, well, gee, if marriage is all about procreation, as some people are arguing, I have not procreated. How valid is my marriage?
Right.
Would he say his marriage isn't as valid as the next person's marriage? So he's another little wild card there. So I mean, so it's basically, you know, 4 more or less supporting, 2 wild cards, and then you have, of course, the cadre of the, you know, Darth Vaders, which are like Alito, Scalia, and Roberts, who doesn't say anything anyway.
Well,
So.
Clarence Thomas is sort of.
I'm over. I'm over him.
Yeah,
it's like
I
he doesn't even
feel
say
like-
anything.
yeah.
He's like,
I mean, I think about people like Thurgood Marshall who just like rolling over in their grave at this guy. I mean, Clarence Thomas is sort of a joke.
what is it? Yeah, it doesn't.
Who
Really,
appointed
never.
him? Was it Reagan? Reagan appointed him, right?
Yeah. So it's just it's.
What do you
really-
think about? What do you think about? I mean, here in your community, I've noticed there's a lot of. It seems like they're building and building and building and adding to and adding to. And metaphorically, I look at that as like, I mean, everybody knows that, you know, the gay community runs this place.
Yeah.
And my point is that
Or
they're
it's
just
always
adding, they're adding the whole idea of marriage equality. People are adding to it. It's not like people aren't trying to take away from They're adding to
expanding.
the idea. Yeah.
Well,
it's
marriage
growing.
has been going through these evolutionary changes ever
Right.
since, which I think is fascinating when you consider that in 1967 there were some states that forbid marriage between interracial couples,
Right.
which was absolutely absurd
Right.
and curious because that in itself flew to some extent in the face of the good faith and credit part of the 4th Article of the Constitution, which
Right.
requires that states, or encourages states to recognize their common laws,
Right, right,
interstate. So in other words, if an interracial couple could get married in one state, was their marriage not legal in another state?
Right.
You know, and I think that's part of some of the arguments that they're looking at with regards to marriage equality, because if you have an LGBT couple that is legally married in New York and then moves to North Carolina where they're not, does their marriage get disbanded,
Mm-hmm.
or is it not recognized?
And that's one thing
And-
you can lean toward with the Supreme Court. They do try to have a sort of structure, if you will, when it comes to rulings. They don't that scenario you just described is just too messy for the institution.
Well, it touches on the issue of states' rights.
Right,
This
right.
precious little thing of states. But in the case of 1967, where the Supreme Court said, okay, I'm sorry, you know, banning marriage on the basis of race between couples is just unconstitutional.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's it. It's a law of the land now. All of the states are just going to have to ban that level of discrimination. So now enter in, so aside from Proposition 8, which is one thing that they're looking at, enter now DOMA, which might have a national precedence or federal precedence, which
Right.
is what they're looking at.
Right.
Because this is the case where I think it is Windsor versus the United States, in which this woman who was, I believe, married to her partner and then inherited the money and the estate and everything else as she would naturally inherit as being her married to this woman after she had died. And then and according to federal law, now she has to pay, because she inherited what was hers
Right.
from her spouse. She now has to pay over $300,000 in estate taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So she's saying, wait a minute, I'm married, why should I have to pay this estate tax? Which is now she's bringing it up to the Supreme Court, and now they're going to examine
Another thing.
the federal stance
Yeah,
of
the
that
stance.
the marriage is defined as a union between a man and a woman. If DOMA gets knocked down, then she won't have to pay that estate tax, and automatically whoever is married in any of the states where marriage is permitted, they will be able to receive automatically the national and federal benefits that they are entitled to, as any married couple would.
Right.
And now this makes it really scary for the states
Right.
that have tried to ban
That kind of equality.
equality, because then, you know, the federal government approves of this,
Right.
so now we can. So then there'll be a wave of challenges coming up in these individual states from people who have then gotten legally married and maybe would have moved to those states that don't have it and say, well, your law has it on the Constitution, on your state constitution, that I can't be married, but yet the federal government says I can be married. What's going on with that?
Yeah.
We're going to see a tsunami wave of suits against perhaps individual states if the Supreme Court ruling does not emit a statement to the effect that, like they did for interracial marriage, saying that any ban prohibiting lesbian and gay people from getting married is unconstitutional. So we don't know. They could say, in this particular case, the federal government will recognize all legally married couples. And if you happen to be in a state where you can't get married, then you can't be a legally married couple to be able to receive those federal benefits.
Right.
But those people in the states like New York State, Rhode Island, Minnesota, they will then all get their. So then you'll have the haves and the have-nots.
No,
it's a
it's
mess.
too sloppy for them to, I think, fortify that argument that, we're going to leave it up to the states. Because if you leave it up to the states, what happens is confusion.
Yeah.
And that is something that, I don't want to say we got to follow the social order. I mean, a bigger picture too thing, I think, what president has ever led this country who has had a firm opinion or argument on a specific social issue and it's not upheld or respected? For example, Obama saying, I support same-sex marriages. So it's like, what, in our country, we just don't hear our president say that he supports something and that not have us just sort of follow along. It goes through the gauntlet of, psychobabble or whatever, but eventually we all sort of sociologically get in line.
He has definitely used his bully pulpit in
Absolutely.
a way that has affected a remarkable sociological change. I remember watching the television set when he announced that he was in favor and supported the right for gay people to marry each other, and watched the polls and how they changed literally overnight.
Right.
I think at one point it was
Barely.
49% against and 46 for gay marriage. And then in the preceding weeks after that statement,
It went up to almost 49 to 50%.
it got over the 50% mark, and even in the African American community,
Right.
they superseded that of the general population.
Absolutely.
So
That's my
it just is a shining example of that the president, while he is a public servant, as all presidents are, also has to be a leader.
Right.
And he was showing leadership.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, you look at something, and we can use another example in regards to a policy that I was totally against. I'm talking about the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act it was almost like Hitler was about to be printed on all food stamps or something. I mean, that Patriot Act is just awful. But George Bush loved the Patriot Act. He thought it was amazing, and what happened? The Patriot Act got passed.
Right.
In fact, we got a double up on it.
That's right.
The second one, and our president supported that,
Right.
and that went through. And I
Right.
think the same thing's going to happen with
Exactly.
marriage equality. I just
Exactly.
believe that.
Exactly. It should be fascinating, and I haven't. When we tried doing this first initial interview, I think several weeks or about a couple of months ago, there were only 9 states, and since then there's been 3 additional states that joined the ranks. So now we're talking about 12 states
Right.
that now recognize marriage equality.
And I think that's another problem that these conservatives are going to have. I mean, religiosity has turned into sort of a conversation rather than a commitment for a lot of people. More people are speaking and conversing about religion and belief rather than just diving right in and going, and that's really healthy. I think that intellectually this country, the people in it,
Right.
are asking some very serious questions about social issues.
Right. It's been part of the social popular contract that religion was held as something sacrosanct and not meant to be debated. Well, it's my religion, so that it stands as it is.
Right.
Where opposing views or different interpretations could not be debated.
Right.
And we're just seeing now, this is even from within the circles of Christians who
Right.
who really embrace the Bible will be taking a look at that and saying, well, I hear what you're saying when you point out Leviticus. However, if we take a look at the New Testament, Jesus never said anything at all about homosexuality or the love between people of the same gender, except just to generally love your neighbor. And maybe those few in the New Testament that maybe cited maybe a homophobic response to homosexuality, they were his apostles and not Jesus Christ himself.
Well, yeah. So you're looking at the practical aspect of homosexuality.
It's like, you know, do you want to if you want to cherry pick and choose,
Absolutely.
you can find any passage in the Bible, in the Quran, or in any other spiritual scriptural text, anything to already support a prejudice you already have.
Right.
So,
well, isn't it because I think too people are exposed to more information rather than just myth and fear? I mean, with the internet, with social media, with things that people are. I mean, you got people like Bill and Melinda Gates flying around the world trying to make sure people have laptops, you know, and not for a financial benefit, but for sociological awareness of stuff. That's cool, man.
Right. We live in the age of information, and I don't doubt for 1 minute that because people are able to share information instantly, that there has been an incremental leap in terms of social acceptance of the lesbian and gay community.
Absolutely.
Because people are talking and twittering and chatting and laying out their positions and having debates, civilized debates online.
Yeah, and then you have relationships too, not just intellectually, but like, oh my God, my cousin's gay, or my uncle's gay, or my brother's gay, or my, you know, like these politicians who are staunch Republicans, and they go, oops, Daisy, my daughter's a homosexual.
Well, Dick Cheney, and his daughter, Mary Cheney, who is the biggest lesbian you can possibly imagine.
I know.
Why she's a Republican still confounds me to this day.
I think a lot of it has to do with just insanity. I'm sorry. I try to have an open mind. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about politically, the president going through all these problems with with all the different issues that, with the IRS and, the different problems that he's having with
smoke screens. What is this?
Isn't it the biggest thing?
In other words, if something happens, 20,000 miles, it's Obama's fault.
Right.
Officials within the IRS may or may not have done something. It's Obama's fault.
Right.
The man does not have 50,000 tentacles in every single aspect.
Well, just the scrutiny that and that's what I wanted to get to. It's like, I believe that this president is under so much scrutiny when it comes to...
Unprecedented.
Yeah. Can't you see the difference? I mean, it's like, did President Obama sort of fly into Benghazi one day and parachute into the consulate and go, this is all taken care of?
There have been so many other attacks on other embassies from other presidents, and none has with more deaths. Not that one death is
They don't allow you to say that though. But don't be realistic.
Well, the bottom line is Republicans can't get over the fact that Barack Obama was legitimately elected as the president of the United States.
Right.
They have a problem with that,
right.
Which is why they tried to appeal Obama about 37 times.
Yeah, it's 37. 37.
It's getting a little old.
Yeah, come on.
It's the law of the land.
Right.
Supreme Court said so. Get over it.
Yeah, they can't let it
Why
go.
are we wasting time, resources, and money?
Can you believe the amount of work that these people could really be doing? I mean, we already know that this is the worst Congress in almost the nation's history. But to spend all this time on work that is meaningless, it ought to be illegal. I think it ought to be like if you go on a job and you are purposely and deliberately sort of you're sort of trying to not work. You're trying to not get things done because you don't like who's in charge.
You get fired.
You get fired. You're fired. You're fired. You can't sit around and figure out ways to screw over the boss. He is the executive. He's in charge of, things, all government. I mean, and to sit around and conjure up ways to make his job harder, to not get any of your own work done, just seems kind of weird in any nation. I just don't
Well,
see.
what it all is this vying for power. Republicans want power.
Right.
They want power.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will do whatever it takes to discredit the president, to ensure that another Democrat will not be
Right. They're after
elected.
Hillary. I really believe that.
They don't want her. They're afraid of her.
They are.
She's not gonna have.
She's not as.
She's not gonna take it.
She's really a liberal too. I mean,
Oh.
Obama is more of a compromiser. He likes to kind of weigh things.
I see him as a centrist.
He is.
He's a
He
centrist,
really is.
yeah.
But Hillary Clinton leans heavily to the left. So they are scared.
Yeah. So the Republicans have had this campaign, certainly during Barack Obama's first term, and now throughout his second term.
Oh, yeah.
It's really getting wearing.
Yeah.
It's getting very old. I mean, just looking at the way they responded when Barack Obama got elected. I mean,
I was telling
I watched Fox News.
Yeah. Karl Rove had a stroke.
He had a stroke.
Emotionally, he collapsed.
And I think her name, I don't know if her name was Megan, she was one of the newscasters there, and when Karl Rove went on his little hissy fit, she kind of looked, she said, I hear what you're saying, but, you think, it can't be this way because such and such a county hasn't weighed in. And she said, wait, is this just math that Republicans do to make themselves feel better?
Right. One of the guys even said, Karl, it's over.
Yeah. And she went down and checked in the office.
She sent people to the county.
She said, it's
in
over.
the Fox studios, and they were trying to tell him, Mr. Rove, it's like what happened during the debate. Mr. Romney, sit down. Karl Rove, sit down, hush. It's over. Right. So now what's going on is let's make sure that Hillary doesn't win. We're running out of time. I wanted to kind of get a final statement from you because we really want to see you again. Particularly after, even if we can't come down, we can do a Skype with you, or we can do it over the phone.
Sure.
And in fact, I want to get a commitment from you. When the ruling happens,
yes,
we're just going to track you down.
Great.
We're going to find you and just get your response.
So we'll either have a cake there and cookies. So it'll be either a celebration, or
we'll send you flowers
wait.
or something. Yeah, you and your partner. We'll send you flowers or something to celebrate. In my all heart, I even told my friend, Obama's going to win this election. What I hear, and I'll sort of throw it to you. What I'm seeing, and I'm at my age, I'm seeing a society of ignorant, sort of fear-based people shrinking. Absolutely. And they're running out of the votes. They're running out of the voices. They're running out of votes. And so, they have to use myth because they don't really have the head count. Right. For people to keep believing this crap. Right. They're running out of believers. They're running out of. So take
that pool of ultra conservative people is, as you mentioned, is shrinking, and with that shrinkage, the viscosity level, the thickness, the vitriol gets thicker and more vicious, which is why we're hearing all of that horrible rhetoric coming out of it, because they don't have a leg to stand on, and they know it. Right. As I once pointed out, esa cabra salió del corral y se va pa'l montes. We say in Spanish, that goat ran out of the corral and it's running up the mountain. The genie is not going back into the bottle. It's over. The youth vote certainly supports marriage equality. Yeah. The polls reflect it. Right. It's over. Yeah. My message, it's over. Get over it. Yeah. Buy yourself an ice cream cone. Yeah. You'll feel better. Yeah. Stop buying all these voting machines. Yes. You know what I mean? You can't. They do a lot of. Have a glass of orange juice. Chill out. Yeah. Go on a vacation. Yeah. We're gonna have a conversation too about immigration later on. That's another interesting thing that's gonna be happening. I'm getting hungry. That's all the time we have. I'll see you next time when it's time to eat. Bye bye.